The Pittsburgh Steelers versus the Detroit Lions had conference implications. It had divisional implication. It had playoff implications. The question is this, Paige, Dimakos, was this the most important matchup thus far this season?
I think it was such a defining moment this year because you're talking about cross conferences. It's very rare to have an AFC NFC matchup that has as much playoff implications as this game did. The other component of this is just the fact that the Steelers came into this game as a 7.5 point underdog. The Detroit Lions had this weird streak going where they didn't lose back-to-back games. There was this thought process that this team was just they've been streaky. They've been back and forth. And the Lions were expected to be a team that was at the top of the NFC North. They are not there. They were a team that was expected to compete for a Super Bowl. They are not there. And instead of walking away from this game going, okay, the Detroit Lions are a contender, we're walking away saying the Pittsburgh Steelers are a contender. At least I am. And that was a surprise to everybody that wasn't listening to the Draft Club, apparently. Because I said last week, this Detroit Lions team has just been very all over the place. The defense, as much as they've done a good job overcoming the injuries, the last 4 weeks have been a bottom four defense statistically across every category that matters. And unfortunately, you just are kind of in this in-between phase with Detroit now where they're going to have some tough decisions to come here pretty soon. You've got a lot of expiring contracts. You've got guys who haven't been paid like Brian Branch, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs. These are all contracts that they're going to have to work out. They're going to have to continue to draft really well. And I think this game there was a lot going into it. And if you think about 3 weeks ago and the fact that people were chanting "Fire Tomlin" inside Pittsburgh Stadium, and then they won 3 straight games in a row. They're now 2 games over the Ravens in the division. I bet those Pittsburgh Steelers fans feel a little differently today.
Yeah, I mean, it seems as though Mike Tomlin just always finds a way, right?
Yep.
And every time we're ready to throw that narrative away, it comes back again, and he just continues to
He just
find a way.
punches
And
back, right?
yeah,
Like
it
every
looks
time.
bleak some way halfway through the season, and he just continues to find a way to win football games and keep his streak going of having what I think finishing 500 or better and never
Yep.
having a losing season in the NFL. I'm going to say yes, this was important. This was important because it tilted the AFC North, right? We kept wondering who was going to come out of there. Was it going to be the Steelers? Was it going to be the Ravens? The Bengals had minimal hope at some point, right? To have a shot, and I think now the picture is clear that it's the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then when you look at it from the other side to the NFC, especially the NFC North, first off, let's say this: outside of the NFC West, the NFC North is the most tough division,
Yep.
right? Because it's not that the Detroit Lions are a bad football team.
Mm-mm.
It's just that we always say this that the game of football comes down to mistakes, right? Minimizing mistakes. And it comes down to usually 1 or 2 plays throughout a game, and
Yep.
that can swing you in the balance one way or the other. Unfortunately, some of those breaks didn't go to Detroit Lions' way, right? And so they find themselves probably on the outside looking in because, like I said, they are in the second best division. The first best division is the NFC West.
Yeah.
And they look like they may get 3 teams in, and that's going to leave the Detroit Lions on the outside looking in.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is not where you leave an NFC South team out, right? The divisional winners always get in, and that's the way it
Yep.
is right now. And I know, trust me, since I started covering this league, the first year that I was here, Arizona Cardinal fans, you're gonna feel this with me. The Cardinals won 10 games that year. Two teams above them that were both better than them in the NFC West, and they didn't make the postseason. This is just how it goes. So I understand Lions fans. There's some concern because they feel like they can beat anybody when they're firing on all cylinders. But I think the most impressive thing that I took away from this game was the Steelers shut down that run game with the exception of the last drive, really, with Jahmyr
Mhm.
Gibbs. I mean, the first half, they had nothing going for them. And on top of that, you're talking about the explosive runs that they had on the offensive side. You've got 2 running backs who are averaging over 4.5 yards per carry, which is the only team in the NFL that's doing that. What are 2 things that you can do in the cold weather that travel in the postseason? You got to be able to stop the run. You got to be able to run the football. And that's why the Pittsburgh Steelers, if they continue to play like this, and Aaron Rodgers is playing through injury, as a reminder, he has been significantly better over this 3-game stretch. And you and I text about this off camera. There's something to be said about that little Cam Hayward, Aaron Rodgers, Mike
Mhm.
Tomlin. It feels very important, and we can't quantify quite yet why, but I have a feeling there may be like a 30 for 30 that happens eventually, and the beginning of it is that photo.
Yeah. No, and the reason I brought it up too, because I think it was on ESPN Countdown, and they were talking to Cam Hayward, and he was saying that that was something that Mike Tomlin was intentional about doing every single time. So that kind of got me thinking: is Mike Tomlin planning on retiring or leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, regardless of how this season ends up, right? And because Aaron Rodgers is retiring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cam Hayward is he's an older guy, right? He's
Yep.
one
Yep.
maybe the second oldest guy on the roster behind Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
And then you have Mike Tomlin, who's been there damn near 20 years, right? So it's no wonder that that trio, like, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Makes you tilt your head to the side a little bit and say,
Yeah.
hey, what's going on over here in
It feels
Pittsburgh?
like a
Real
last
Atlanta.
dance type of situation,
Yeah, it
right?
does.
It
Yep.
feels like you got three old heads who kind of operate the same way. And if you remember Cam Hayward before Aaron Rodgers got there, kind of had those comments about him on the podcast and what it meant to be a Steeler. And now you fast forward to where they are now, and they're like buddy. And if you're a Packer fan, I know you remember this. He and Devontae Adams used to walk off the field all the time. This is a Rodgers thing. He's always been very intentional with what he does. He likes to send messages when he's doing things. We know this about Rodgers. And Tomlin is petty and definitely would participate in the game of sending a message. And I think these three are a nasty trio to walk out. And I think they heard the noise, right? Tomlin heard the noise. He doesn't shy away from it anytime those questions are asked when he's at the podium. Aaron Rodgers hasn't shied away from it when they've been at the podium, and all they've been doing is getting better and better each week. So, yeah, I walked away from this going, told you so, told you so, told you so, okay? And Vegas, I'm talking to you with that 7.5-point disrespectful ass line that should not have been the case. So hopefully some people made some money. And then two, I hope people are paying attention, because I understand that everybody's been waiting for the Ravens to figure it out, which they haven't. The Bengals, obviously, we know what's happened there. This team has gotten better consistently over the last month, and so much about going into the postseason and winning a Super Bowl is about getting hot and getting healthy at the right time. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are getting healthy, they're getting better, and they're getting hot at the right time. And to me, they are a dangerous team because you've got a head coach and a quarterback that have both won a Super Bowl. And there's not a lot of that in this, especially in this era of the playoffs. We're going to have a lot of guys who we've been used to being in. We're going to have a lot of new faces, a lot of inexperienced guys. That is going to matter. That championship DNA is going to matter. And I think the Steelers are in a really good position right now.
Yep, 100%. Let's do this, man. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions. And the question is this: did they miss their championship window? Is the championship window for the Detroit Lions now closed?
This version, yes, because their championship window, they were gifted last season. If you remember, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, who are now both head coaches, they decided collectively to run it back, right? They felt like that year prior, they lost to the Niners, that they were this close, right? They felt this close to winning a Super Bowl. And so collectively, which is very rare, when you have coaches who get opportunities to go take head coaching jobs, coordinators, they very rarely stick around to run it back. And they did. And it just didn't work out. It didn't work out last year. The Commanders came in. That was a horrendous loss in the postseason. Last year was their shot. And turnover, like having that turnover with the coordinators has obviously been a major problem for them. As a Bears fan, I would like to thank you for Ben Johnson, because very clearly, Ben Johnson knows what he's doing. And I know Detroit Lions fans took a victory lap in September, but nothing is won in September. And so now this team, this championship window is closed. The only reason I'm saying it's this version is because I want to be very, very particular here. I have a lot of faith in Brad Holmes. I have a lot of faith in Dan Campbell. And I do believe that they can revitalize this organization with a new version of this, but it's not going to look like how it's looked, because they've got some tough decisions to make personnel-wise over the next year, and they can't pay. They're $23 million over the cap, and they haven't paid Jahmyr Gibbs. So they're going to have to figure some things out, and they're going to have to continue to draft well. So this version, I think, is over. I'm curious to see what you think here.
Yeah, so okay, let's get back in the fold, right? I'm here. I'm gonna disagree with you, Paige Dimakos. I don't think it's over just because when you look at the core pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jared Goff, I think he's going to be there. Amon St. Brown is
Yep.
going to be there. Jameer Gibbs is going to be there. Panay Sewell is going to be there. On the defensive side, Aiden Hutchinson is going to be there. That core of players is going to be there. Right now, this team is an offensive led team, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a defense that tries to keep them in football games.
Yeah.
But when you look at the rest of the NFC, period, these are well balanced teams, right? When you
Mm-hmm.
talk about the Los Angeles Rams, you talk about the Philadelphia Eagles, you talk about the San Francisco 49ers, the Seattle Seahawks. I think what the Detroit Lions have to do, they have to look themselves in the mirror and say, you know what? On the defensive side of the football, the roster, we have to get better.
Yeah.
We have to find another edge rusher, right, to go opposite of Aiden Hutchinson, right? We have to become more dynamic on the second level of the defense, talking about the linebackers. And then the
Mm-hmm.
cornerback position, they took a swing of what that was 2 years ago. They drafted Terrion Arnold
Yeah.
in his ring spell. Both guys have been injured, right? And they just haven't developed quite to the pace that you wanted them to develop. I thought they were good draft picks at the time, but they just haven't developed. And so I think you have to go back to the drawing board and reconfigure this thing because the unfortunate part is for the Detroit Lions, there's a new person at this dance, and it's called the Chicago Bears, right? And so it's not a two-man race anymore between either you and the Packers or you and the Vikings, right? Now this is three teams that could be in the race. And
Yep.
who knows what JJ McCarthy does in the offseason and if he's
Yeah.
able to come back and ready to rock and roll, and you can have four true contenders. So it needs to be all gas, no breaks. Let's improve the defensive side of the football because offensively, I think is the team's identity, but you need to be balanced to win in the NFC.
So I'll ask you this because I kind of
Yep.
you kind of said exactly what I was meaning to say. Like this version of
Mhm.
the team, right? They're gonna have to change. So their identity has been this aggressive, go for it on fourth down, offensive, and I don't think that version is gonna work anymore. Like I think they
Okay,
need to
so
evolve, and it's gonna look different than it has over this 4 or 5 year period of time. Like they're gonna have to figure out who this new version of the Lions is because, like you said, like a core piece is Jameer Gibbs, but they haven't paid him yet, right? You got
mhm.
Brian Branch they want to pay, Sam Laporta they want to play. They've got a lot of guys they're gonna have to make decisions on, and they've drafted well, but they've also had a ton of injuries. So I just think it's this version is, I mean, how they've run this team, right? I just think they're gonna have to adapt and evolve, and they'll have core pieces, but I'm not sure that Jared Goff's always going to be involved in that core piece. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not sure what that's going to look like forever because, especially in today's day and age, and if you look across this division, to be able to have at least an athletic quarterback that can get out of the pocket and make things different for you. I mean, look at what Jordan Love, what Caleb Williams is doing. It's just, this is the evolution of the game. So I will be curious. That's the one part of this that I'm like, I'm not certain that that's Jared Goff's job forever.
Yeah, no, and I don't believe so, and I don't think Jared Goff believes so, right? Like if you had to put a timeline or a clock on Jared Goff's career at playing at a high level,
2 years.
I was gonna say 3 to 4 and under, right? Like,
Okay.
let's set it at 3.5 years and under. He has a couple more years to where he plays at a high level. The part that I was getting into when I was talking about this roster, I don't even mind Dan Campbell being aggressive, right? But the issue is that they get into these games and they can't win every shootout, right? Like that is just not possible. And we see that the Chicago Bears are able to grit some games out, right? We see that the Green Bay Packers are able to win some 17-9 games.
Yeah.
When you walk into a game, if you're the Detroit Lions, and you're like, hey, if my offense only scores 20 points, there's a high chance that you're probably going to lose that football
Yeah.
game. And that can't be the case. And listen, I've been on some really good football teams. I've seen some really bad football teams, right? And the thing is, defensively, when you don't have the horses, there's nothing you can do about it.
No.
Offensively, you can scheme things up, right? You can get certain guys open and things like that. But when you have corners that can't cover, you got linebackers that can't
Yeah.
tackle,
Yeah.
you in trouble. There's nothing you can do about it. So I think it just needs to be a concerted effort because I love the grit, the mentality
Me
that they
too.
play with, right? And I don't think this is a coaching thing. So let me get that part out. Like Dan
No,
Campbell,
me
I love what
neither.
he brings to the table. Calvin Shepard, you can see him on the sideline and the passion that he plays with. But a coach, and we always say this, and this is the part that coaches say, but they don't say this out loud, right? We always have the saying, it ain't about the X's and O's, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, right?
Mm,
And you need to have a couple more Jimmies and Joes on the
yeah.
defensive side of the football to be able to balance this thing up.
They also need to just have some health luck. Like they've just
Yeah,
had some
it's
bad
just
luck
been a
on
luck of the draw.
health.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
corners, that's just a tough break. I think they were
Yeah.
already at week 4 or 5, and they were pulling guys off the street, right?
Yeah.
Like I
No,
think like a
literally.
Rasul. Yeah, it
Literally.
was crazy.
No, practice squad. I don't even know if I would call them practice squad. It might have been high school guys that were pulling off the street to come play. But I think the reality is the component of the division also makes this tougher as well because you're looking at
Mhm.
young quarterbacks, young cores, explosive offenses that you have to go up against. And you got to be able to
Yeah,
play defense against those teams. And look at what the Green Bay Packers did with the Micah Parsons trade. And I understand he's injured right now, but we saw the impact that Micah Parsons had. We've seen what the Chicago Bears have been able to do by bringing in Dennis Allen. I think they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. I don't know that the staff is going to look the same either, but you and I are in agreement. This culture in Detroit is going to stay. Right? What Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have done together has been very impressive for a franchise that was literally never good, right? Never good. They had never, in the history of their franchise, they had never been a Super Bowl favorite until last year. So this is something where I think Lions fans have become a little, so what happens to all fan bases? You get a little spoiled, right? And you forget where you were. I understand the frustration, but I think this team will be back as a competitor next season. I just don't think they're in it this year.